This is a typical intersection in North America. Something about being outside this, trying to just cross the street to the other side is unpleasant, right? Maybe people are just driving a little too fast. But at intersections like these, roughly 1/4 of traffic fatalities and about 1/2 of all traffic injuries in the United States are attributed to intersections. Okay, so what? Maybe there are a few unlucky people that get into fatal traffic accidents each year. How many do you think there are in the US? Maybe 5,000 deaths a year. 15,000 maybe? Try 25,000. But I was lying. There are 30,000 related traffic deaths yearly. And if you thought that was bad, I lied again. There are consistently 40,000 lives lost in the US every single year due to traffic violence. This is not an accident or inevitable. These are preventable deaths. Isn't that insane? And why is car dependency in North America just the way it is? I was born in a typical car-dependent Chicago suburb and followed the typical path of just biking around the neighborhood as a kid until I turned 16 and got my driver's license and finally gained some independence by being able to drive. And I've never thought twice about why we drive everywhere and why it's essential in American society to own an automobile to do just about everything, like groceries, running errands, commuting, and traveling. And it wasn't until college where I saw a few videos from the YouTuber Not Just Bikes. And that was my orange-pilled moment, they say, that opened my eyes to the realities of car dependency in North America and how our lives and our cities have been greatly diminished because of them. And here's how we got here. After World War II, the United States emerged as the dominant global superpower. Economically strong, resource-rich, and full of optimism for new growth. At the same time, the automobile symbolized freedom, prosperity, and modernity. And these forces converged to reshape the American development pattern. And in 1956, the Federal Aid Highway Act was passed, authorizing the construction of the Interstate Highway System, the largest public works project in U.S. history. And while it improved national connectivity, it also accelerated the fragmentation of urban cores and the expansion of car-oriented suburban sprawl. As federal investment flowed into highways, public transit systems were neglected or actively dismantled, and streetcars and rail lines were removed in cities across the country to make way for more roads and highways. And at the same time, wealthier Americans began moving to the suburbs, seeking some space, privacy, and what was marketed as the American dream. And this led to sprawling, low-density development, which spread infrastructure like roads, sewers, and utilities across vast areas. And the result, a form of growth that is unplanned, expensive to maintain, and economically unsustainable. And I recommend reading the book Strong Towns if you're interested in this. And for the first time in human history, cities that had been dense, walkable, and people-oriented, places where homes, jobs, shops, and services were often within reach by foot or by transit, were redesigned around the car. If you want to get depressed, look up photos of your hometown in the early 20th century and see how much was bulldozed just to make way for empty parking lots. Anyways, strict zoning laws enforce separation between residential, commercial, and industrial areas, making a car necessary for even the most basic errands. Minimum parking restrictions created seas of asphalt, leading to terrible land use across cities. And today, most American cities are facing financial strain, crumbling infrastructure, and deep inequality due to this car-centric design and development pattern. And the common denominator through it all? Car dependency. A system built on the illusion of limitless growth, but which continues to spread resources too thin, disconnecting people and bankrupting our communities. And it's been 70 years of this development pattern and a failed experiment of using the car for when centuries before we've lived and built our human habitats in an objectively better way. Cars are a major burden on society in our lives. The US spends hundreds of billions of dollars, your tax dollars, each year simply on road infrastructure. Since the completion of the interstate system in 1956, the US has spent trillions of dollars on car infrastructure alone. This doesn't account for all the local expenditures on roads and related infrastructure. Think of how much we could have used with those trillions and trillions of dollars into social programs and healthcare, for example. To own and operate a new car in the US, you fork around $12,000 every year due to depreciation, gas, insurance, repairs, financing. And what could you do with an extra 12 grand in your pocket every year? Car ownership also encourages sedentary behavior, a major risk factor for obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. And the CDC attributes a significant portion of healthcare spending to diseases linked to inactivity, like being in a metal air-conditioned box for an estimated 4 to 5 years of your life. In addition, a typical passenger vehicle emits about 4.6 metric tons of CO2 per year, according to the EPA. Even if you want to drive less or be car-free entirely, it's often inconvenient, dangerous, and downright impossible. Thanks to those trillions and trillions of your tax dollars, we've optimized our country to be most convenient for the automobile, not for people. And of course it's more convenient to just drive to the grocery store. Of course it's inconvenient to take the bus or bike to work. We've designed everything to work around the car, and choosing any alternatives is left to those who can't afford it or are insane, like me.
At least if I get hit, I have it on camera.
So by sheer coincidence, I chose a grad school program in a city with some of the best biking and public transit networks I'd ever experienced in my life. It's not Amsterdam or Portland or New York, but it's better than the average in the US. But because I've never saved enough to buy a car, and frankly I don't really know how I would afford one, I bought a bicycle to get around campus and to run basic errands. And I didn't know it at the time, but that decision changed everything for me. Thanks to that above average transit system, bike lanes, and trail networks, I've saved thousands of dollars by not owning a car. I've offset that sedentary and expensive lifestyle, not just financially, but physically and emotionally. And I've explored my city and the surrounding areas at a human scale. Being outside of the windshield, I now understand my environment. I've become better at navigation and directions. I know many of the local businesses now, the back streets and scenic routes. I've seen what is crumbling in our neighborhoods, something you can't see from the windshield. And it's made me painfully aware of how much of the built environment is hostile to humans. Noisy, fragmented, dangerous, decaying.
In the middle of a median of a high-speed two-way road.
But it's also made me more connected to where I live than I've ever felt behind a steering wheel. And I now live below my means. My life feels richer though, freer and more intentional than ever. And I know I'll get a ton of comments from car bros saying, cars are freedom and that's just the American way. But here's my question back. How is it freedom if you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to survive in your own city? How is it freedom for the people who can't drive? Children, disabled folks, seniors, people living paycheck to paycheck. Our most vulnerable populations. And can you look the families of the 40,000 people who die every year from traffic violence in the eye and say, that's just the price of freedom? I'm not saying you have to go fully car-free. Not everyone can. But just think for a moment. Have you tried your city's bus system? When was the last time you dusted off your old bike to just go on a ride? Could you walk to the store this week, maybe just once to see? These small acts matter. They ripple out, and they change the default. Because here's the truth. People want something better. There is real, potent demand for walkable, connected, human scale neighborhoods, like the ones that we've had for most of human history. But demand isn't enough. We need political will, and that starts with pressure on your city council, on your state reps, on federal policies that keep funding highways over humans. And again, cars have a place, they're important tools, but we've built a society where you're punished and treated as second class at best for not owning one. And that's not freedom. That's dependency, what you can call motonormativity. And that dependency is killing us, because nothing will change until we question what we've been told is normal. If you're interested in reframing how we view our spaces, streets, and systems, and advocating for people-oriented places, and frankly, what it's like to live in North America car-free, subscribe to The Right of Way for more.
The automobile is an important factor in the spread of urban areas. Traveling over modern highways, people can escape from the crowded cities and move outward in search of open space to build their homes and raise their families.